What's going on, homie? Today I want to show you how you can get your MIDI editor from looking like this with no labels to this with labels, so it makes programming so much easier. Let me show you. Okay, so for this example, I'm going to use Get Good Drums One Kit Wonder Brutal. But as the title states, this can be applied to any VST, any sort of synth, any drum program, any guitar program, which will be my next example. And so I'm going to use One Kit Wonder Brutal. And the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to load up a MIDI effect rack. So I'm going to click and drag and put this before my contact instrument, which is this. Next thing that I need to do is I need to navigate inside of Contact. I need to go to Settings. Inside of here, you can see each MIDI note that I need to add so I can create a label for it. So inside of the MIDI effect rack here, I'm going to choose this icon here, which is the Show and Hide Chain List. And then I'm going to click on Key. And so this is where we're going to be doing most of our work. Now, first thing you need to do is you need to right click and create a chain. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag. And so this only affects one note. And so here, what we need to do is we need to make a chain for each hit inside of the drum program. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do Control D on my keyboard for each hit that I see inside here. And so I'm gonna click here. So we have hit, snare hit, cross stick, tom 1, tom 2, tom 3, tip tight, edge tight. So each of these are going to be a note inside the piano roll or the MIDI editor. And so let's just start off and start naming all of these. And so I will be right back after I name all of these here. Okay, so as you can see, I have everything labeled according to the hits that I have inside of One Kit Wonder Brutal. Now, the next thing that we need to go off and do is we need to move these little notes here. We need to move these to the designated MIDI note displayed inside of One Kit Wonder Brutal. So for example, we have kick hit on C0. So then we grab this guy here. It's on C-2 right now. We need to drag this over to C0. So here it is here, C0. The next one, D0, which is snare hit. And so we'll bring this over to D0, and then cross stick snare is F#0. Okay, so I'm going to do this for each hit. And what I would recommend is if you are using the Get Good Drum stuff, I wouldn't change this mapping. If you made your own custom map, I would highly recommend that you load, like for example, this one is the Invasion preset. And for me, I don't move anything from the default mapping. The reason why I do that is because when I use grooves, I don't have to change anything about the groove. It just goes right into my MIDI editor and everything lines up. And so let me finish this up and then I will be right back. Tom 1, A0, Tom 2, A#0, and then stack is D#4. Okay, so I have everything moved to its designated spot here. You can see everything's moved around. Now, we're not done, and you can check that by going into your DAW. You can see nothing's labeled. There's one thing that you have to do. It's very important. Easy though. Right click, show names in MIDI editor. And so now you can see everything is labeled, and we can also verify because I have some MIDI in here. And so we can just kind of click here, kick. And so that's basically it. Now, one very important thing that you'll need to do after this is you're going to want to go over into your MIDI effect rack. There's a little disk icon here, and you want to save this as a preset. And so once you click here, it's going to bring you inside of your MIDI effect rack presets. You can see I have quite a few. And you are just going to name this. For example, for me, it would be GGD Brutal Key Map. Now I already have one, so I'll just do 2024. And hit enter. And so now anytime that I make a new session and I want to use GGD Brutal, I just click and drag, which I will delete this now that we made this. I will click and drag this in here and it's ready to go. Now you can see here, it doesn't always immediately show the labels. Now, if that ever happens to you, all you need to do is right click, uncheck show MIDI names, and then recheck it and it'll be back. So don't freak out. Okay, so it's a little bit different for stringed instruments like bass and guitar and stuff like that. There's just a few things that you need to add extra in order for this to work. Now you'll see inside of the Get Good drum one that we just made, there's not really any sort of range of notes, right? It's just the hits. For this example, I'm using the Axer MIDI guitar from Steady Sound Audio. You can see when I add a MIDI clip, you can see I have my articulations here, but you can see I have my note range. So from C0 all the way to C#5. But there's also some other articulations, but you'll notice that all of these are blanked out. Now this is intentional. I don't want to see the notes of these because I don't want to confuse myself thinking that these are potential notes that I could use. I only want to see the notes that I can use, as well as the key switches and articulations. And so inside of our MIDI effect rack, you can see that I have all the articulations. It's not anything different. If you want to change the color, you can. It's the same way that you would just change like a track color. However, you can see at the very bottom here, I have a notes chain, and it's literally from end to end. Now, the other thing that I have is I have this little guy here, just a dash, and you've seen the dash earlier. And so you can see my key switches start from here and they end here. And so I have a dash that is going from here all the way until the end of my last articulation. And I have this one going from the beginning all the way to the start of my key switch. Now again, if I didn't have these, just to give you an example, I'll delete these and we'll go back in here. You can see that it still shows my note names. You can see here's my release notes and my left hand noises, and then here's my articulations down here. However, you can see it's showing the note names, which I don't really want to see. And so that's why I have those little dashes in a range inside of here. Now this notes one is very important. You need to add this one because without it, you will only see, like if you didn't have that notes in there, then you would only see this. Nothing else will pull up. Now we want to also see the note range, like I said. And so that's why I have this one that says notes and I go from end to end. And then I have this one for my dashes from the beginning to right when I start my articulations. And then up here, this is my note range, right? Basically, but you can see I have one from the very end to when my articulations and key switches end. And so again, this works for any sort of synth or any guitar plugin, bass plugin, contact, all of those things. The only thing that you will need to do is you will need to go through and find where their key switch labels are and label everything out and, designate where the keys go. And again, make sure that you right click and show names in MIDI editor. There is a caveat here inside of the guitar editor, for example. Now you can see here that I have all my labels. However, one of the features, and I don't know if this is a bug or anything inside of Ableton 12, well, when you have your MIDI effect rack enabled, you're unable to use the scales feature. And so you can see I don't really have a scale button or anything like that. Now, if you want to use that before you start to add your articulations, which is something that I do, what you can do is you will right click on here and you will disable the show names in MIDI editor and your scales and highlight scale will come back. Now, this is a little bit of a workaround. However, it's not that bad because once you get everything written out in the scale that you like with this scale mode enabled, all you need to do is come back and enable your MIDI names and you're back to, adding your articulations. What I typically do, like I use Get Good Drums Nolly Bass, and there's only a few articulations in there. The one that I use is C-1. And so I usually do a lot of my scale writing in my bass. Then I'll bring it into my guitar. So then at that point, I kind of already know where my scale is. And so that's one way that you can go about doing it. But other than that, the MIDI names have helped me so much and made programming so much faster and easier and funner because everything is just right there. You know exactly the key, you know exactly what the articulation is or the drum is. And so I highly recommend that you do this for all of your stringed instruments and your drums. All right, so that's how you go about adding labels to your MIDI editor. Now, it's not too difficult. It's a little tedious. However, if you didn't want to go off and do this, well, your boy hooked you up. I already did it for a lot of the Get Good Drum stuff. I did it for Axer Guitar and a few other things. Those are all going to be in my Patreon. Now, that's not everything that's in my Patreon. There's a lot of other cool things in there. And so the link's going to be in the description. Another thing, just want to let you know that I do one-on-ones now. And so that's going to be in the description. But other than that, dude, thank you so much for your time. And I hope this helps out. But we'll see you next time. Have a good one.